So welcome back students in this series of Monster Technology. So in the previous video we have discussed about two kind of loops, the while loop and the for loop. We have also discussed about the do while loop, which is the exit control loop. So now in this video we'll discuss about two more loops, which is for in loop and for off loop. But the for in and for off loop is completely designed for the iterables, which is mean it is used to iterate over the arrays. Studying about for in and for off loop, we have to study about the JavaScript arrays. So now what is a JavaScript array? An array is a special variable which can hold more than one value. So let's suppose you want to store your name or any singular value. So for that you have to create a variable. But now if you have to store multiple values. So for storing multiple values, creating multiple variables is not a good option. So we'll bundle up all the related values into a single part, into a single unit, which is known as an array. So array is a continuous data location on which we can store multiple data with a singular name. So let me show how to create an array. For this, let's open the Visual Studio Code and let's start the coding part. Now let me create a just simple new file, array.html, array test.html. Let's make this array test.html, and this is my file. Now let's start the script tag for the JavaScript part. Now let's say if I want to store 5 names, for that I don't have to create 5 variables. I can store that 5 names into the array of name. Now according to the syntax of array, we have to create a variable and assign an array to it. So for assigning an array, we have to just use this square brackets. Now I have to, let's say I want to store 5 names, so I'll write down 5 names, which is first of all my name Kuldeep. Next we'll write Aman. Next let's say write Rahul. Next let's say write Mukund. Oh, there is an error. I just mistakenly put a dot on the place of a comma. Now it's all right. Now also the size of array is also not defined. We can create the array of any length. So Rahul Mukulan, let's say Mukund. So this is my array. So I have stored 5 names in a single variable. Now to accessing these names, so let's suppose if I have a simple name, I have written a name which is equals to Kuldeep. Now if I want to get the value of this Kuldeep, I will simply write document dot write name, which is the name of the variable. Very simple. Let me just execute this. Now you can see we are getting the output Kuldeep on the screen. But what if I just pass directly the array on in the document.write function? So I'll write document.write names. So if I do this, complete array will shown on the onto the screen. So you can see the complete array on the screen. Now let's say if I want to show only this Rahul. For that we'll have to iterate this array using the index. So in array, every content have an index. So for example, this Kuldeep has the index 0. This Aman will have 1. This Rahul will have 2. Mukul will have 3 and Mukund will have 4. So the array of the index of array will varies from 0 to n minus 1, which is n is what? N is the length of the array. So for example, if you are storing 4 variables, or let's say if you are storing 5 variables, so the starting index will be 0 and the ending index will be 5 minus 1, which is equals to 4. So here you can see the starting index is 0 and the ending index is 5 minus 1, which is equals to 4. So this is how we can use an array. Now how to use this? So we'll not write down directly names, we'll write down document dot write. Let's first of all put a br tag. Then we'll write down names of, let's say if I want to print this Rahul. So the index of Rahul is Kuldeep is 0, Aman is 1, Rahul is 2. So we'll write down array of 2. So you can see the output. Here you can see the Rahul as the output. So this is how we can create an array. Now array is not defined only for the strings. We can also add some integers over here. So we can also put some integers. We can also put some floating point. Let me put some floating point numbers, which are decimal number points. Also we can have the boolean, which is true false values. So we can store any kind of value. We can in fact we can store the nested arrays, which is array inside array. So let me put this 65 and 35 inside the array. So it is a nested array concept. So putting array inside a array. So let me save this and check the output. So now you can see you are getting all the data inside the. Now let's say if I want to print this. So the index of 654 is automatically document.write. Let me write down document.write a br tag, distinguish between two lines, and then we'll write names of 3. Just a second. Yeah. Now you can see output 654. Now printing this array, if I want to iterate, or if I want to get the complete data from the array, now writing that data one by one with the index is not a feasible way. So we can use a loop over here. To do a repetitive task, we always use a loop. So printing an array or showing the array on the document is a repetitive task. For that we'll use a loop. So for example, if I use a for loop, so I'll write down for I equals to 0, which is the starting point of the index. Now I want to mention the ending point. For that I have to manually count the array, but for that we can use names dot length. So using the names dot length, we automatically get the length of that array. Now the last index will be names dot length minus 1, because we have started the index using the now we'll write down I less than equals to names dot length minus 1. Next we'll write down I plus document dot write names of I, and also with the br tag. So now let's execute this and check the output. Also let us comment out all the previous outputs so we can get the fresh output from our array. Now you can see inside this is the output. So you can see 35 and 64 are entailed into the same line because this is the array inside an array. So this whole 35, 65 is one element for the main array. This is how an array can be iterated using a for loop. But for arrays, we have specialized loop named as for in or for off loop. So now let's see how that for in and for off loop work. So for that, let's say first of all use for in loop. Now the limitation with the for loop is that we have to mention the starting point, the ending point, and the increment of that array. For that we have to use the nested function, which is names dot length. Now that task is very simplified using the for in and for off loop. How? Let me show you. So for in loop, we have to write for I in and the name of the array, which is names. So I'll write down I in name. So if I print this I, so you will get to know that this I is basically index of the array. So if I use a for in loop and iterate over the array and pass the array inside the name, so I'll get index of the array is in the I variable automatically. We don't have to mention the starting point, we don't have to mention the ending point, we just have to pass the array for that. Now using this index value, we can easily iterate over the array. So we'll write down names of I. So now you can check the output like this. So this is how we can very easily iterate over the array using the for in loop. Now same task can be done using the for off loop. So let me show you how. So if I write down for I of name, so the same task can be done by this, but the difference is in for in loop we get the index of the array inside the loop variable, which is I. But in for off loop we directly get the element of the array. So we'll write down document.write. We directly write down I. We don't have to mention the br tag. We don't have to mention the names of I. We'll directly mention the I because I is the direct data from the array. which is obtained using the for of loop. So I'll write down like this. So let me just simply change the value of this and just make it more simpler so you can get the idea. So this is how. Now let's say, first of all, let's check the output. Now let's say if I want to get the sum out of the array. So if I want to sum the array, so we'll write down sum equals to 0, which is the initialization point. Now let's also define this. Now I'll write down sum equals to sum plus I, and with I is what? I is the data from the array. So we'll do that, and after this thing we'll do what? We'll just print this sum value. Now also let make this value a little simpler so you can also verify that whether the sum is correct or not. According to me, the sum of this array is equals to 19. Now let's check whether the sum we are getting from the array is correct or not. Now let's check this. Obviously, the sum of the array is equals to 19. You can see. So this is how we can use for in loop, for off loop, and other loops also to iterate and to solve multiple problems using the array. So the basic concept of array is to store multiple data inside a single variable. So we don't have to use multiple variables for that, and we don't have to call them that multiple variables. So by using the array, we can conveniently work over a large number of data. So this is all about arrays and the two types of loop used to iterate over the array, which is for in loop and for off loop. In the next video, we'll discuss about the JSON, which is JavaScript object notation used to store the data. So that's all for this video. Thank you for watching this video.